We do begin tonight with the new images now emerging of that horrific explosive crash. A UPS cargo jet seconds after takeoff from Louisville, Kentucky. At least 12 people killed, including all 3 on board, 9 people on the ground.
Investigators say the cargo jet, fully loaded with fuel, managed to clear the fence at the end of the runway, but quickly banked to the right and slammed to the ground, hitting several businesses.
Flight that was recently maintenance. Major up, yes, 2976, the crash out of Louisville, Kentucky, of that MD-11, and there's been some numerous news reports about it. The NTSB has reported. We've got new video for you, and I'm going to tell you why this aircraft didn't climb. And there's a video I'm going to show you that's pretty definitive of why this airplane didn't fly. So for the last 48 hours, I've been scratching my head looking at the video over and over again. I've talked to dozens of commercial airline pilots and saying these airplanes are supposed to climb on 2 engines, even with a fire over on the left side. That video we saw just a couple of days ago. Why in the world did this airplane not climb out? Well, there's a real good reason why it didn't climb out. We'll show you what that reason is here in a minute. The NTSB just got in front of the camera, and they've got some of their initial discoveries or findings from the crash. One of the things that we showed you on the first video was we thought the left engine, the number 1 engine, had actually separated from the aircraft because we had a picture of it laying over on the side of the runway. And I think I told you on that last video, I wasn't definitive about that because you can Photoshop these things, and it hadn't been verified independently. Well, now it's been verified by all the major news agencies and the NTSB. They've actually retrieved the engine, and they've got it in a warehouse. One of the things that the NTSB does in their investigative process after the fact is they will actually collect every airplane, and they will put the airplane completely back together in a huge warehouse. It's absolutely incredible the depth that they go into to get to exactly what happened in order to make sure that it never happens again, because our hearts are broken for these families. And you have to remember there's real people behind all of this. And as you're looking at these really horrific images of this tragic accident, there are real families attached to all this. We want to be respectful to that process. And the NTSB is certainly respectful to that process as well. So let me recap where we are on UPS 2976, and then I'm going to tell you why that airplane never got airborne. We've got video for you, and it's pretty definitive as to why. But UPS 2976, Louisville, Kentucky to Honolulu, Hawaii. They're carrying about 220,000 pounds of fuel altogether. That's about 34,000 gallons of fuel. That's a lot of fuel. They're in their most critical phase of flight, the takeoff. I explained that on the last video. They're the heaviest they're ever going to be. They're most fueled up they're ever going to be. They've got the power all the way full forward, so they don't have a lot of reserve power to call on, and they're fully configured. The landing gear is down, all the flaps are down to initially get airborne. You see the airplane, I'll show you that video again, in super slow-mo this time. You see them initially try to get off the ground, but they limp and they don't quite get up in the air. I'll explain why that happened. But right at what's called V1, and V1 is a speed that the computer on the airplane actually calls out for us. It's one that we calculate ourselves as the pilots, but at V1, that's the go, no-go speed. In other words, you don't have enough runway left in front of you to reject the landing. That's the technical expression for it, to stop on the pavement in front of you. So once you hear V1, every commercial pilot is trained that you continue to fly. You keep the power full up and you roll until you can lift that airplane off the ground, and it might limp into the air, but it's going to fly, and it's going to take off in the runway that you've got remaining. So you're not trained to reject the takeoff after V1. What we clearly know from this incident, since they go off the runway at 184 knots, is that they were past V1, because they do not attempt to reject the takeoff. If they'd gotten on the brakes and pulled the power back, they would have slowed down significantly. They would have hit the same buildings, but they would have been going slower. That's neither here nor there. They're not trained to do that. They're trained to take off in that scenario. So somewhere between V1 and rotate, they have this catastrophic failure of the number 1 engine. Now, the engine, as we know, separated from the aircraft, and what we don't know is what happened to one of the other engines. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. the number one engine actually comes off the airplane. Now, there's a couple of reasons it could have come off. One is, in this aircraft design, the MD-11 and the DC-10, I flew the DC-10 for a long time. The DC-10 was notorious, and there was an accident back in the 70s where a pylon failed, and the pylon is that attachment to the wing on top of the engine. So they get the big engine underneath, you get the pylon on top. And it failed on a DC-10 back in the 70s. And I think we're going to do another video comparing these two in the future. But the engine actually came off the aircraft. Same sort of thing you see here. It wasn't on the ground. It was actually airborne. I think they were at about 500 feet. Now, one of the things that you're going to get out of this investigation is that the NTSB already said that the ADS-B data said the airplane got up to 400 feet. It did not get up to 400 feet. You can see that in the video. ADS-B data is notoriously way off when you're on the ground, right? Once it gets up to about 400 or 500 real feet, then it's really, really accurate up to that point. But when you're on the ground, it's not accurate. You can see from the videos that the airplane doesn't get more than about 50 feet total. Now, the nose of the aircraft might be at 150 feet, but the actual stuff that hit anything was down around 50 feet or so. So at any rate, the engine could have separated for any number of reasons. It could have been a catastrophic failure of the engine that caused the pylon to fail and the engine came off, or it could have been the pylon failed, which caused a catastrophic failure of the engine. Either way, it could have happened. There's a lot of people that think it's most likely the pylon because they had pylon failures in the past with those airplanes. However, the pylon failures in the past were due to high lateral G factors on those pylons. In other words, the airplane got sideways with the airstream, and the G's on the side, pushing on the side of those pylons, caused the engine to come off. Right, this airplane, as I can see from the video, and you can see it's going straight forward, right down the runway. So I don't think it was a pylon failure. I think it was actually the engine that failed, and that engine, when it failed, caused the number 3 engine to fail. I'm going to show you a video here proving that in just a second. So that number 3 engine, which is the engine on the right wing, remember there's 3.
Thank you for watching.